All right. Hello, hello. Thank you all for joining us today at Access Pros to kind of walk through the CMMC Level 2 assessment journey. And this is really for those organizations seeking CMMC Level 2 certification, as well as perhaps a few folks are also trying to pass the CCP, the CCA, Environmental Health CCA exam itself. I think there's a ton of value for all parties, right? So today I want to kind of really walk through and based on experience and based on what we're seeing in the field, some of the kind of the key success factors that enables organizations to become successful with CMMC compliance. So today we're going to get started very quickly and really begin to get into the kind of the weeds here in the interest of time. So essentially, when we look at the CMMC Level 2 journey, we have about kind of at least you as an OSC, it comes down to about maybe four phases. The first part is really the readiness and kind of preparation. The readiness. Preparation is very, very key for success here. So as part of that readiness, it's important that you conduct yourself or conduct a gap analysis and kind of remediate some of those findings. You get an RPO to come kick the tires on the environment to figure out exactly where you may have gaps and opportunity to kind of remediate and treat some of the risk and vulnerabilities you might have. At this point, also, it's important that you've put together essentially a policies and procedures documentation, ESSP plan. It's still really easy to conduct a mock assessment. So essentially here, he conducts a window address, you bring in perhaps even the C3PO or the firm to really simulate a C3 CMMC audit to identify any weaknesses you may have or you may still have to remediate before you begin to consult a C3PO for the real assessment. Obviously, the real assessment has very little tolerance for control failure. So it's important as part of that readiness, as part of that preparation, that you actually do a few window dressing. So it really has a few things. You put together your documentation in the right order to make it easy for the C3PL. You need to train your people on how to respond to the C3PL to make sure the assessment itself is really successful. So your job as an OSA is to make your job easy for the C3PL. Then you can schedule phase 3 here, schedule the audit actually with C3PL. Usually could be on site, could be remote, depends on where you have CUI data or XEI data. That's going to determine which location gets looked at, because obviously when you think about CMMC, it's kind of very information-centric type of assessment. So as part of that form of assessment, we're scheduling an audit, it can either be on site, it could be remote, and you submitting that evidence to the C3PL to come up with that determination and judgment call on whether you pass the CMMC assessment or not. So now, it's one of three outcomes could occur depending on essentially how well you perform the assessment, right? One could be you pass the assessment and you're giving, a CMMC certification. Two could be, you don't quite pass all the requirements, but you demonstrated enough progress on your posture to allow for a few items that are non-critical to be PWAMable, right? So when we say PWAM, it means plans of action milestone, basically is an indication that you truly have a plan to actually remediate or address some of the failures or control gaps within your environment. So the PWAM allows you to address non-conformities, right? Also gives you that kind of timeline, that kind of runway for correction. So once you address the PWAM, typically have 180 days to address those, and then you issue the CMM certificates, right? So those are kind of the possible outcomes there. So let's, even for those who are kind of really new to this, give them a glimpse into why is all this happening. Yes, the nation's technology head is at risk from persistent cyber espionage. You have nation states that would rather steal than invest in technology, right? So, and the adversaries are really catching up, stealing the technology to close major gaps, saving themselves billions of dollars in R&D, right? It's easier to steal the information than to invest all that money. It takes time to really achieve technology breakthroughs, right? So to really, give themselves or leapfrog themselves, some adversaries may rather steal than having to invest in technology themselves. So the motivation is strong. They learn their capabilities, still technology, and minimize U.S. advantage and superiority when it comes to major warfare, right? And which is not good for us. Sets us back as a nation. Obviously, there are vulnerabilities everywhere. Obviously, threat actors going to look for the weakest link, so they would rather hack a defense contractor than hack the military itself, because the military will have military grade protection and controls, right? So So obviously, given that the defense industrial base relies heavily on contractors, mom and pops, small, medium-sized businesses, and also large contractors, the threat actors will look for where the weakest link is and try to exploit it to gain some sort of an advantage. So one example has usually been used to demonstrate this is when you look at this, you can see the US F-35 and the Chinese J-31. Obviously, you see a lot of similarities and you begin to wonder, okay, why there's similarities? I can't tell you, but it can be inferred that there's been some type of some type of text that's probably occurred over a period of time to achieve this same degree of similarities. Obviously, one of the few technologies that really keeps our military Air Force really safe is actually the stealth coating, right? Some of that have been stolen. Anyway, what we see here is a diagram showing both similarities. There's really an indication, I think even evidence that some of the design elements and components have been stolen. So really, that's why the government's really investing. In fact, at the last count, it's estimated that the U.S. government's lost close to about $600 billion to information theft, at least on the military side, because of weaknesses within the defense industrial base. So sensitive information is linked through interconnected defense supply chain. Obviously, there's a lot of information flowing through different contractors to achieve um, to build certain types of technologies and systems for the military government. So usually you get the prime contractor that's being issued the contract. Prime contractor has to work with the different subcontractors to achieve the goal. It's a major ecosystem, everyone playing different roles, from data technology to building nuts and bolts, what have you, and they have to work in concert together. So you can see contractor A could do a good job, contractor B could do a good job, contractor C could be vulnerable, right? As a result, the information that's being flowed and passed down the supply chain can be done by the threat actor and giving them somewhat of an advantage, and costing the country billions of dollars, right? So the Department of Defense, which is now the Department of War, has shifted from just having the contractor just saying, you know what, trust me, I have implemented some of the controls in the FAR and the DFAR, right? So the DoD historically has always kind of assumed, oh, well, contractors will doing the best they can in the best interest of the country, but it turns out that if you're probably not implementing the right control to really protect sensitive information. So the government's really clamping down and saying, you know what, well, we're going to move away from this whole trust me mindset to one of, okay, yes, I do trust you, got to prove it, right? So there's now, a movement from self-attestation, as you see on here, to verification. So now CMC has been in place, is now written into law. In other words, contractors now have to really comply. And CMMC provides a deal with increased assurance that contractors are protecting sensitive information. So they need additional assurance that the investments they are making in technology is yielding the right results and is giving the military an advantage, increasing advantage over other nation states around the world, right? So it builds on existing regulation by having mandatory third-party assessment and third-party assessment being conducted by AC3PO and government verification of cybersecurity practice. So that's kind of the high-level gist, some of the context for those who are kind of really new to this. So the CMMC has like kind of 4 phases, right? And now for those, in fact, prepping for the CCA, this is important to know. It's really there is a phase 1, which is preparation. As the preparation phase and planning. So you're planning, you're preparing in phase 1. Phase 2, which is when you conduct the assessment, which is really the main event, is when all the activities really occurs, right? So you can think of it also as your execution phase. Phase 3 is really the aftermath, right? So this is a reporting out phase, right? So you're conducting the assessment, you're counting all the results, and you're reporting, compiling all the results and reporting out. Phase 4, which is kind of finish line, which is the kind of the close-off phase. Right? When one is familiar with program management or project management, this may seem kind of really straightforward to you. So phase 1, readiness compliance to determine whether, hey, is this OSC seeking organization prepared for the assessment? Yes, no. If yes, proceed. No, well, let them know that they're not prepared. They got some work to do. Phase 2, which is, okay, going through the compliance, going through that gateway. Now let's assess whether you comply. Phase 3, which is you're compiling all the results and getting ready to reports based on your assessment. Phase 4, you close things out, right? So let's delve into phase 1 here. As you see right here, phase 1, readiness compliance. The first question the security will ask you is, are you adequately prepared? So it's not just anecdotal information. this is a point where you begin to scope out the assessment correctly because it's important for you. So the CPO is not evaluating controls. They're just trying to really plan out the assessment. They're trying to understand who you are, your business. They're trying to frame the assessment. They're trying to understand whether you have a system security plan, right? As you see on here, that'll be some of the documentation they'll be asking for. They'll ask you whether you have an asset inventory, whether you have a network diagram, whether you have a data flow diagram, whether you have policies and procedures. They may look at some of this to see how sufficiently prepared you are. So here, the C3PO is not evaluating controls, but rather verifying you have sufficient evidence to be able to go through an assessment. That's key, that's important. All right. So some of the common people we see, here is, and this is not obviously exhaustive, is there some, OSCs are not using the right CSP, the cloud service provider. Many OSCs, knowing that they may not be able to implement some of those controls locally, leverage cloud service providers, because it's kind of really more practical for them, right? So many of them sometimes don't end up using the right cloud service providers. Not all cloud service providers are the same. So for CMMC, it's important that you use a CSP provider that's FedRAMP moderate authorized or equivalent. They're two different things. One is moderate authorized, which is they've been accredited by FedRAMP's project management office. The other one is, well, they have equivalences that they've gone through. That's all kind of DoD assessment that they equal that of FedRAMP authorized, but they've not been issued the certificate in itself. So this must be validated because many OSCs inherit a number of controls from the cloud service providers because cloud service providers actually provide them an enclave. So you're able to offload some of those control requirements over to them. But hey, from what we've seen in the field, some OSCs sometimes have used commercial providers, right? And come to the assessment table, and that's a no-go. That's a kind of a showstopper for them because they're not using the right cloud service providers. So the other thing here is some of those OSCs don't really have a CATE code, right? They've not been registered. So no valid CATE code means the C3PO cannot proceed. They cannot conduct this assessment. This strips off new contractors, even some managed service providers. So you now have some managed service providers that are providing services to other ASCs. And also need to go through this assessment process, but many of them are not registered with the CATE code. And that's really interesting. That's kind of an observation. And the other part is the inadequate scoping, right? So again, the goal of the responsibility of the OSC is to ensure they have scoped the environment, they've assessed the environment, they know where COI resides within that environment. For large organizations, it could be very challenging, right? Just understanding where data, also from a data handling and that perspective, and from a data governance perspective, it could be very challenging. Just knowing where the COI has probably moved through the network, or in fact, maybe perhaps even leaking through the network. So many organizations have to kind of rethink truly the data governance as a whole for just the government as a whole, in this situation. So your data growth diagram does match reality. So it's important that you as a OSC has invested time understanding your data flow. Again, CMMC is very information centric. This is going to be very key because it's something that C3PO is going to request for. If you say you print COI, you better make sure the printer is in scope. Oh, beyond the printer being in scope, you have to make sure that that printer was authorized to be able to print COI, to be able to conduct that network with that COI. So as an expert, as a job as a 3PO is to validate your story. So you need to have a story card, a picture of how things really work within your environment. If the story doesn't make sense, there's going to be a non-starter. So you have to make sure all the dots are properly connected and they make sense and they match and they tie for that. For you to go through that gauntlet of rigorous assessment. So it is a kind of deep dive into your SSP and make sure it's written for success. Don't have an example here, maybe helpful next time. So for this, it's important that your SSP plan, you make it as detailed as possible. Now, SSP plans could range from like 300 pages to 500 pages easily, for good reason, because you want to make sure it's a full capture of all the controls within your environment and how they all map to the old CMMC 80171 procedures as well. So you can't address the SSP at the control level. It can be high level. It has to be pretty granular to the specific statements within this 80171. So this makes always so that the SSO's job easier and proves you haven't missed anything, right? So the red flag we commonly see here is if you haven't consulted 801 at all is appropriate bill 4-star. You can already make sure your controls in your SSD plan maps directly with 801 is key. It's important. Failure to do so puts your assessment at the risk of failure, right? So we get to phase one. We're going through the gauntlet. The secretary has looked through all your documentation. They're giving you a green light. Yes, we can proceed with the assessment. Now, well, then you get to the main event, right? This is important for, in fact, the OSCs as well to see and just look at things also through the lens of the secretary and also the assessor, right? They all kind of follow this structured progress. So the assessment is a structured process, not a surprise inspection. So again, it goes back to the whole idea around preparation. Preparation, in fact, before phase one. So some of the key activities we get to see to ensure the successful outcome here is an in-briefing meeting. So the lead assessor kicks things off, records the meetings of the meetings, answers some initial questions. There's an assessment on the conformity of the controls. So this 801.1, excuse me, using 171A as a guide, So, 801.1A is used as a guide for some of those control elements, right? There's also daily checkpoints. So at the end of the day, the team summarizes progress, discusses any items needing clarification. You will know how you're progressing within the space every day. Typically starts to take like, I don't know, 5 days, right? By day 3, you should have, as I was saying, insight into whether you're going to pass this assessment or not. Typical duration for small business of 50 employees, plan Monday to Friday engagements, just a quick 1-week engagement. By day 3, you guys know you know how things are really progressing for you. So this is kind of a quick deep dive into kind of a control. They're about total count for level 2 assessment, about 110 control you have to satisfy. So there are 2 parts to this. One is the documentation phase. CMMC is the documentation that you have to prove. By documentation, you also have to show technical implementation of what you in fact documented. So typically in the one of the key controls there, one of the first few you will see here is the AC control, right? And kind of access controls. It's this ACA, at this part of the documentation, you're supposed to identify authorized users. So all the evidence you provide is the onboarding checklist, the user list. ACP just identify process acting on behalf of the user. So you have service accounts, interactive, non-interactive, kind of automated scripts that enables you to perform some specific system functions. You need to make sure you have processes for those as well. You also need to identify authorized devices. So it's not just users, it's also devices. So printer, for example, is going to be added to your particular enclave. It's going to be so process COI. It has to be part of, it has to be authorized to be identified and be authorized to be part of that enclave. Then you have to proceed with showing the implementation. So show system access is limited to identify users, right? Some of the evidence the secret PO may request from you will be Active Directory settings, role-based access controls, right? For ACE, you may need to show access is limited to identify processors. So it may have to show kind of a live demo in terms of how you use service account for maybe backups of all the system functions as well, how setting automated scripts, how they run. You may also have to show access is limited to identify devices. So enter ID join devices, be it mobile devices, be it portable devices, only offensive devices that connects or the user process COI will need to be, identified, right? You need to show those devices, right? You need to show, and again, technology allows you to really do that, right? May Intune may provide some visibility into that. So actually inside, if it's not documented, we can say it happened, right? That it happened is really proven by you documenting it and also by you showing evidence of its implementation. So these things are kind of really key and important, right? So before we get into the point deduction system, typically what you will see here, as you see on my screen here, is some of the practices. There's a few things that the system will go through. Just going back to the other point, which is authorized users identified. They're going to review this control. This is just one of the 110 kind of control requirements as you see on here. I'm expanding it out a little bit. Is it going to expand? No, it's not going to expand. Okay, that's okay. All right. So you have the OSC, the CPO looking through some of the standards on here, right? So through the standards on here, just a standard AC level 1, 3.1.2. Sorry, this is not what we're looking at. Yeah, so level 1-3.1.1. There are some supplementary guidance here that the sector PO will have to follow through, right? So this is kind of the guide. These are kind of the procedures, 871A. And also, these are the kind of assessment methods they're going to use, right? So they may have to do some system selection. They're going to look at your policies. They're going to look at procedures. They're going to look at the system security plan. They may interview a few people on your team, right? To come to that determination. They may test some controls, see what you have there in Entra ID, look at what's the kind of domain joined, what's not domain joined. Look at how you identify external systems connecting to your network, right? Those are things that they'll look at, right? Yeah, some kind of general discussion points there. So essentially, the TPO is following the script. You usually tend to follow the script to the ladder to demonstrate here that you're meeting those requirements. And these are requirements even as an OSC you also have access to. So once all that is done, the results are kind of really kind of artifact to obtain. It could be commentary. There's a place to kind of upload your artifacts. Definitely a lot of references here when it comes to points where the OSC needs clarification and how all those can really come together. So in as much as you as an OSC is providing a lot of storytelling, putting it all together, the CTP also has to make sure you're also informed on what the regulation is. And there's some additional reference documents here that could be used. You can also document your observation and for this most part, and also capture kind of feedback as needed over here. All right. So really, typically, these are the kind of processes the CTP will go through. Now, still part of the main event here, which is the conducting of the assessment phase. So the basics, right? You start with a perfect score of 110 for every met requirement, and you've been scored, right? So the scoring, just provide column scoring here. So you will start with kind of perfect 110. These are the kind of the weights, right? So there are a lot of these are the weights. So for example, AC L1-3.1.1 as a practice weight of 5. If you fail this control, you're gonna lose points. You're gonna lose points. You're gonna lose points. You're gonna lose points, right? If you fail that control, you're gonna lose points. 5-pointer. If you fail this, you're gonna lose 5-pointer. And if you fail this, you're not gonna get your certification off the bat, right? You're not gonna get the certification off the bat. So it's important that for all those key 5-pointers here, right, from ACL, I think in total they're like about 43 of them, that you make sure you get this right. It's important that you pass all those 5-pointers. Those 5-pointers are incredibly important, right? So as you walk through this, obviously there's an example here. There's an example here. So this is what the C3PO will look at. They're looking at level 1, looking at the practice weights, the artifacts, how long it's taken, whether it's performable, whether it's inherited. So if you're using FedRAMP, obviously they're taking inheriting some of those controls from FedRAMP. So this one doesn't take as much, right? Because there's a kind of reliance on that FedRAMP or that hospice provider shared responsibility because they are FedRAMP already. So those ones that are kind of FedRAMP kind of don't take as much, they don't take much time actually to execute on. You also capture exactly who's being interviewed, right? So anyway, there's a deduction system. So for example, if you don't meet those requirements, for example, in this situation, you're signing with a 0, right? If you meet the requirements, you're signing with a 5. If you don't meet the requirements, you're signing with a 0. So all those things really add up quite a bit. Anyway, just to show you an example here. So yeah, it's a painful, right? If you don't meet it, you lose 5 points, your score drops immediately from 110 to 105, right? So the POAM paradox, so for you to go on a POAM, right, there are 3 rules for deferral. So you cannot just POAM your waste compliance. To be eligible for condition certification for a POAM, you must meet all 3 criteria. Rule 1, 80% must satisfy 80% of those controls. Your final score must be 88 or higher. So this 88 out of the 110 controls. And rule number 2, no high value failures, right? So 0, 3-pointers and 5-pointers can be on your POAM. A single failure of a high value is a showstopper. You're going to fail. That's just a fact, really. So for your 5-pointer, you must make sure you knock those things out. Make sure you really, really do a good job with the detailing and the implementation. Rule 3, which is the forbidden few. So a subset of 1-pointers are not POAMable. So you want to check those as well. So for those ones, an example will be example will be, so if you did this, look at those one pointers as well. Will be actually, is it pointable? No. Okay. Yeah, so security awareness training, you have to train your users on recognizing and reporting potential indicators of a threat. So this is not pointable. You need to satisfy these requirements fully, right, for you to proceed, right? So again, just giving guys a heads up on what's punnable, what's not punnable, things you should be looking out for to make sure you're successful with the CMMC. So moving along here, so phase three, the aftermath. So yeah, we've gone through the preparation, we've gone through the conduct assessments, the main events, all the activities. Then we're in phase three, which is the reporting. So we're compiling all the report, we've done all the analysis, and now the C3PO compiles the results in the required format for the government's EMAS system. They perform kind of quality review checks. They bring in what you call a CAP, the CMMC Quality Assessment Professional, CCAP. They conduct a formal outbrief meeting. So this is a readout meeting, just showing exactly what they've done and the results of the assessments. Your critical responsibility will be to you'll be trying to hash all the artifacts used as evidence during the assessment. You must provide the hash value to the CPO and retain evidence for 6 years, right? So that'll be kind of on years in OSC. So the CPO also will remove any proprietary data from their system and only retains records they created, right? So this is important as well. So yeah, so this is reporting out. Done the assessment, now we're reporting out. Officially, this phase is called the reporting phase. Now, yes, done with phase three. Now you're here. Phase four, there's a finish line. There's a point where a determination is made, right? Did I pass or didn't I pass? Right? Or did I pass conditionally, right? So the three possible outcomes here. So outcome A actually is, well, you met all the 110 controls, you had excellent results, great for you. Well, you're CMMC certified, now you can do business with the government. This is really the banner for many people, which is the top of the mountain, right? And this is really Mountain Everest. Now you can officially get DoD contracts. This is business, this is the business imperative here, right? Outcome B, not the best one, but not all that bad, right? You have 180 days to really put yourself in a position to actually obtain CMMC certification. So for any remedial gaps you have, many of them one pointers, many of them non-critical, many of them could actually be easily executed. The CPPO will look at that and issue you a CMMC Level 2 conditional certificate. So the clock is ticking there. Then you have 180 days clock. If you receive a conditional certificate, a 180-day count begins from the day of issue. You must close out all the poems within this window. For you to do so requires a complete new assessment from scratch. We don't want that. So three outcomes. Outcome A, you pass. Outcome B, well, you don't quite pass. We're going to give you a conditional certificate. At least you have an opportunity 180 days to remediate. Outcome three is, oh, well, you did fail. Then you have to start from scratch. No one wants that, right? So there's a strategic imperative for anyone seeking to be CMMC compliant. The reality here is that there are very few C3PO. So if you're ready, it's important that you consult with a C3PO and get on their calendar as quickly as possible. You can always access those on Cybersecurity Marketplace. There's a high demand. Some C3POs are booked until next year in November. But again, the good thing here is that Cybersecurity has been, and the Department of Defense also doing a great job at onboarding new C3POs, right? So as of but 2, 3 months ago, there were like 50 seat appeals. As of today's recording, December 7, 2025, there are about 90 seat appeals, right? So good things happening there. You also need to understand the players, right? So not all seat appeals, they are the same. Many have them have different specializations. So your organization to contract with one that really understands your environment, has dealt with business within your industry, and that's some experience or assessment experience under the belt, right? So C3PO, the organization you contract will be to conduct assessment, assessor, the CC and SCC also have people that work with C3POs. They must have them on staff. You just can't call an assessor. You must find a Schedule 1 of the 90 authorized organizations, right? So the number keeps on going. I think in the last, I don't know, year or so, that number has increased by 100%, so which is a great thing, right? Right, moving along here. How to choose the right C3PO? Well, there are a few things, few variables, like vetting a vendor, right? They are partners, but they have this reporting line, and their reporting line to the Department of Defense, but have this dotted line to you. So you need to vet them properly. You have to go beyond price. Typically, this assessment will cost them about $40,000 or more. So do not look at price. You get what you pay for. Check for relevant experience. Have you assessed environment similar to ours, right? Do you understand our industry? Your assessors familiar with manufacturing, and those are kind of relevant things you should ask as well. And also tech stack. So obviously there's some, and because again, you also trying to make sure the CTP is also successful and they can get you the assessment very easily. You want to avoid it, you want to avoid a situation where the assessors are learning, on the job, right? So having some familiarity with the environment to get them up and running very, very quickly, right, is very important. So I mean, you want to have some questions, you found out about specific cloud platforms, security tools, MSP model, our industry. We dealt with organizations that kind of have similar traits to us, right? Then you can assess some of the softer skills here, which is really, do you get good vibes from them? You get good vibes from them. They have a great personality, cultural fit, all those things really count. So action step for you is, hey, if you're ready, go ahead, go to Cyber Marketplace, start having those conversations today. So yeah, so quick infographics to just kind of pull everything together for you. Readiness is key. The few common showstoppers, avoid the showstoppers. You're informed now. Make sure cage code, you check the box on cage code. Make sure you use the right cloud service provider. Make sure you scope properly. Make sure you have an SSP plan. Make sure all that's being documented. Your policies and procedures are documented. Then you start at 110 controls. Your goal is to make sure points are not deducted. So make sure that's possible. You have to satisfy all the requirements, not just from a documentation perspective, but also from an implementation perspective, right? Critical controls cannot be deferred, right? So deficiency in three or five pointers results in automatic failure with no chance to fix before you fix the plan, right? So you have to make sure you knock those out. Yeah, this shows two outcomes, but really there are two potentially good outcomes, but one bad outcome, which is on the potential good outcomes is you get the final certificate, you pass all the exam excellently, or you get 80%, right? So you get kind of the B, but you have to remediate all those controls. So you have 180-day deadline. For the conditional pass, we have 180 days to fix issues or almost undergo a full reassessment. So you gotta make sure you fix all those gaps within those 180 days. So usually full certification, conditional, the other outcome, not pleasing, the other non-pleasing outcome here is that you have, you're not given the certificate, right? Because you failed, literally. So you have to schedule another assessment. What still makes sense to go through the full assessment, so at least that gives you an indication where you have failures or gaps to really remediate. So as an OSC, you got to retain evidence for 6 years. Contractors must cryptographically hash and store all assessments evidence for 6 years, right? Here's an infographic that walks you through the process. You know, pretty much the same. Phase one, get ready. Phase two, right? There's a conducting of assessment phase. Phase three, you have to report the results, right? Phase four, you kind of close things out, right? Officially, this is a kind of terminology used from Cyber All right, so your journey starts with preparation. When people ask, what do I need to make sure I'm successful in my CMMC audit? Preparation. Your goal is to make the job easy for your assessors. You want to streamline it to the point where assessor can make a determination as quick as possible with little or no questions. Your people got to be prepared. Your documentation has to be in order, right? And you also have to be informed on what's the assessment process looks like. And if you're watching this video, you're already taking some of the initial steps for that. So a successful CMMC assessment is the final step in a long journey of preparation. Getting your scope right is important. Writing your detailed SSP, underline detail there, and addressing all the 110 controls before you call CSP. Make sure you knock out the, I think the 43, 5, and 3 pointers. They're not permeable. Before you call the CTPOs is a key to successful outcome. So it's absolutely crucial you go in there 100% believing you're ready to go, right? And you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, right? So again, if you're ready, you prepared, you've done all the necessary elements across your T's, dotted your I's, you've gone through your mock assessments, and by all means, by all means, okay, call your cyber. If you need help, obviously, in terms of your mock assessments, in terms of in fact, getting ready. You have a free consultation, reach us at info@accesspros.com to kind of really get started, to put you on the path of success. All right, thank you all for joining. Again, yeah, if you are watching this either as an OSC and as a CPO, hopefully you found valuable information here that puts you on the path of either passing your exam, right? Because everyone's going through this as well. Everyone's trying to figure this out, or becoming certified, right? So take care all, and see you during our next presentation. Bye for now.